Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And this book is about in of 194 pages, and I will just read the book, uh, not pronounce the words, and complete the reading. First, so I begin from prologue. Prologue. Ikigai, a mysterious word. This book came into being on a rainy night in Tokyo when its authors sat down together for the first time in one of the city's tiny bar. Read each other's work but had never met thanks to the thousands of miles that separate Barcelona from the capital of Japan. Then a mutual acquaintance put us in touch, launching a friendship that led to this project and seems destined to last a lifetime. The next time we got together a year later, we parked in downtown Tokyo and ended up talking about trends in Western psychology, especially logotherapy, which helps people. We remarked that Viktor Frankl's logotherapy had gone out of fashion among participating therapists who favored other schools of psychology. Though people still search for meaning how they live, we ask ourselves thinking things like what is the meaning of life? Live longer, or should I seek a higher purpose? Why do some people know what they want and have a passion for life, while others languish in confusion? At some point in our conversation, the mysterious word ikigai came up. This Japanese concept, which translates roughly as the happiness of always being busy, is likely is like logotherapy, but it goes a step beyond. It also seems to be one way of explaining the extraordinary longevity of the Japanese, especially on the island of Okinawa, where there are 22.55 people over the age of 100 for every 100,000 inhabitants, far more than the global average. Those who study why the inhabitants of this island in the south of Japan live longer than the people anywhere else in the world believe that one of the keys, in addition to healthful diet, a simple life in the outdoors, green tea, and subtropical climate. Subtropical climate. Its average temperature is like that of Hawaii. Is ikigai that saves their life. While researching this concept, we discovered that not a single book in the fields of psychology or personal development is dedicated to bringing this philosophy to the West. Is Ikigai the reason? Or there are more centenarians? How does it inspire people to stay active until the very end? What is the secret to a long and happy life? As we explored the matter further, we discovered that one place in particular on the north end of the island, with a population of 3,000, boasts the highest life expectancy in the world, a fact that has earned in the nickname of the village of longevity. Longevity, longevity. Okinawa is where most of Japan's shikuasha, a lime-like fruit that packs an extraordinary antioxidant punch, comes from. Could that be Ogimi's secret to long life? Or is it the purity of water used to brew its moringa tea? We decided to go to we decided to go we decided to go study the secrets of the Japanese centenarians in person. After a year of preliminary after a year of pre after a year of preliminary research, we arrived in the village where residents speak an ancient dialect and practice an animist religion that features long-haired forest spirits called Punagaya. With our cameras and recording device in hand, as soon as we arrived, we could sense the incredible friendliness of its residents, who laughed and joked incessantly, incessantly, and amid lush green hills fed by crystalline waters. As we conducted our interviews with the eldest resident of the town, we realized that something far more powerful than just these natural resources was at work. An uncommon joy flows from its inhabitants, guides them through the long and pleasurable journey of their lives. It never ceased to surprise us that this haven precisely in Okinawa, where 200,000 innocent lives were lost at the end of World War II, rather than harbor animosity towards outsiders. However, Okinawans live by the principle of ichari, part of a community. From an early age, they practice yuimaru, teamwork, helping one another, nurturing friendships, eating light, getting enough rest, and doing regular moderate exercise are all part of the equation of good health. But at the heart of the joy de vivre, joy de vivre that inspires these centenarians to keep celebrating birthdays and cherishing each new day is their ikigai. The purpose of this big book is to bring the secrets of Japan's Japan's centenarians to you and give you the tools to find your own ikigai, because those who discover their ikigai have everything they need for a long and joyful journey through life. Happy travels. Hector Garcia and Francesc Mireles. Chapter 1, Ikigai, the art of staying young while growing old. What is your reason for being? According to the Japanese, everyone has an ikigai, while others are looking, though they carry it within them. Our ikigai is hidden deep inside each of us, and finding it requires a patient, patience, research. According to those born on Okinawa, the island with the most centenarians in the world, our ikigai is the reason we get up in the morning. Whatever you do, don't retire. Having a clearly defined ikigai brings satisfaction, happiness, and meaning to our lives. The purpose of this book is to help you find yours and to share insights from Japanese philosophy on the lasting health, mind, and spirit. One surprising thing you notice living in Japan is how active people remain after they retire. In fact, many Japanese people never really retire. They keep doing what they love for as long they as health allows. There is, in fact, no word in Japanese that means retire in the sense of leaving the workforce for good, as in English. According to Dan Buettner, a National Geographic reporter who knows the country well, having a purpose in life is so important in Japanese culture that our idea of retirement simply doesn't exist there. The island of almost eternal youth. Almost eternal youth. Certain longevity नहीं certain longevity certain longevity studies suggest that a strong sense of community and a clear defined ikigai are just as important as famously healthful Japanese diet, perhaps even more. Recent medical studies of centenarians from Okinawa and other so-called blue zones, the geographic regions where people live longest, provide a number of interesting facts about these ordinary human beings. Not only they do live much longer than the rest of the world's population, they also suffer from the fewer chronic illness such as cancer and heart disease. Inflammatory disorders are also less common. Many of these centenarians enjoy unviable level of vitality, health that would be unthinkable for people of advanced age elsewhere. Their their blood tests reveal fewer free radicals, which are responsible for cellular aging as a result of drinking tea until their stomachs are only 80% full. Women experience more moderate symptoms during menopause, and both men and women maintain higher levels of sexual hormones until much later in life. The rate of dementia is well below the global average. Though we will consider each of the following findings over the course of the book, research clearly indicates each and every day and plays an important role in the blue zones. In Okinawa, women in particular live longer and have fewer diseases than anywhere else in the world. The five regions: Okinawa, Japan, especially the northern part of the island. The locals eat a diet rich in vegetable and tofu, typically typically served on small plates. In addition to their philosophy of ikigai, the Maui and the close knit group of friends, see page number 15, plays an important role in their longevity. Sardinia, Italy, especially in provinces of Nuoro and Ogliastra. Locals on this island consume plenty of vegetables and one or two glasses of wine per day. As in Okinawa, the cohesive cohesive nature of this community is another factor directly. Loma Linda, California. Researchers studied a group of Seventh-day Adventists, Adventists, Adventists who are among the longest living people in United States. The Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica. Locals remain remarkably active after 90. Many of the region's older residents have no problem getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to work in the fields. Ikaria, Greece. One of every three inhabitants of this island near the coast of Turkey is over 90 years old, compared to less than 1% of the population of the United States, a fact that has earned it nickname the island of long life. The local street seems to be a lifestyle that dates back to 500 BC. In the following chapters, we will examine several factors that seem to be the key to longevity and found across the blue zones, paying special attention to Okinawa and its so called village of longevity. First, however, it is worth pointing out that three of these regions are islands where resources can be scarce and communities have to help one another. For many, helping others might be an ikigai strong enough to keep them alive. According to scientists who have studied in the five blue zones, the key to longevity are diet, exercise, finding a purpose in life, and ikigai, and forming strong social ties. That is, having a broad circle of friends and good family relations. Members of these communities manage their time well in order to reduce stress, consume little meat or processed food, or drink alcohol in moderation. They do not do strenuous, strenuous exercise, but they do not move every day. But they do move every day, taking walks and working at their vegetable gardens. People in the blue zones would rather walk than drive. Gardening, which involves daily low intensity movement, is a practice almost all of them have in common. The 80% secret. One of the most common saying in Japan is hara hachibu. Hara hachibu, which is repeated before or after eating and means something like fill your belly to 80%. Ancient wisdom advises against eating until we are full. This is why Okinawans stop eating when they feel their stomach reach 80% of their capacity, rather than overeating and wearing down their bodies with long digestive process that accelerates cellular oxidation. Of course, there is no way to know objectively if your stomach is at 80% capacity. The lesson to learn from this saying is that we should stop eating when we are starving to feel full. The extra side dish, the snack we eat when we know in our hearts we don't really need it, the apple pie after lunch. All this will give us pleasure in the short term, but not having them will make us happier in the long run term. The way food is served is also important. By presenting their meal on many small plates, the Japanese tend to eat less. A meal in a restaurant typical meal in a restaurant in Japan is served in five plates on a different tray. Four of them very small and the main dish slightly bigger. Having five plates in front of you makes it seem like you are going to eat a lot. But what happens most of the time is that you end up feeling slightly hungry. This is one of the reasons why Westerners in Japan typically lose weight and stay trim. Recent studies by nutritionist recent studies by nutritionists 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 the recent studies by nutritionists reveal that Okinawans consume a daily average of 1800 to 1900 calories compared to 2200 to 3300 in United States and have a body mass index between 18 and 22 compared to 26 or 27 in the United States. The Okinawan diet is rich in tofu, sweet potato, fish 3 times per week, and vegetables roughly 11 ounces per day. In the chapter dedicated to nutrition, we will see which healthy antioxidant rich foods are included in this 80%. Maui. Moai, Moai, connected for life. It is customary in Okinawa to form close bonds with local communities. The Moai, a Moai is an informal group of friends which with common interests who look out who look out for one another. For many, serving the community becomes part of their ikigai. The Moai has its origins in hard times when farmers would get together to share best practices and help one another cope with measures, meagers harvests, harvest, harvests. Members of a Maui make a set monthly contribution to the group. This payment allows them to participate in meetings, dinners, game of Go and shogi, Japanese chess, or whatever hobby they have in common. The funds collected by the group are used for activities, but if there is money left over, one member decided on a rotating basis receives a set amount from the surplus. In this way, being part of Moai helps maintain emotional and financial stability. If a member of Moai is in financial trouble, he or she can get an advance from the group's savings. While the details of each Maui's accounting practices vary, 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 vary according to the group and its economic means. The feeling of belonging and support gives the individual a sense of security and helps increase life expectancy. Following this brief introduction to the topic covered in the book, we look at a few causes of premature aging in modern life, and then explore different factors related to ikigai. Chapter 2: Anti Aging Secrets, Little Things That Add Up to a Long and Happy Life. Aging Escape Velocity. For more than a century, we have managed to add an average of 1.0.3 years to our life expectancy every year. Every year. But what would happen if we had the technology to add of life a year of life expectancy every year? In theory, we would achieve immortality biological immortality, having reached velocity. Aging escape velocity and the rabbit. Imagine a sign far off in the future with a number on it that represents the age of your death. Every year that you live, you advance closer to the sign. When you reach the sign, you die. Now imagine a rabbit holding the sign and walking to the future. Every year that you live, the rabbit is half a year as far away. After a while, you will reach the habit and die. But what if the rabbit could walk at a pace of 1 year for every year of your life? You would never able to catch you would never be able to catch the rabbit, and therefore you will never die. The speed at which the rabbit walks to the future is our technology. The more we advance technology and knowledge of our bodies, the faster we can make the rabbit walk. Aging's escape velocity is the moment at which the rabbit walks at a pace of 1 year per year or faster, and we become immortal. Immortal मतलब अमर. Immortal. Researchers with an eye to the future, such as Ray Kurzweil and Aubrey de Grey we will reach claim that we will reach this escape velocity in a matter of decades. Our scientists are less optimistic, predicting that we will reach a limit, a maximum age we won't be able to surpass, no matter how much technology we have. For example, some biologists assert that our cells stop regenerating after about 120 years. Active mind, youthful body. There is much wisdom in the classic saying, mens sana in corpore sano, a sound mind in a sound body. It reminds us that both mind and body are important, and that the health of one is connected to that of the other. It has been shown that maintaining an active, adaptable mind is one of the key factors in staying young. Having a youthful mind also drives you towards a healthy lifestyle that will slow the aging process. Just as a lack of physical activities has negative effects on our body and mood, a lack of mental exercise is bad for us because it causes our neurons and neural connections to deteriorate and as a result reduces our ability to react to our surroundings. This is why it is so important to give our brain a workout. One pioneer in advocating for mental health is the Israeli neuroscientist Shlomo Brzezinski, who argues that the brain needs a lot of stimulation in order to stay in shape. As he stated in an interview with Edward Punset for the Spanish television program Redes, there is a tension between what is good for someone and what they want to do. This is because people, especially older people, like to do things as they have always done them. The problem is that when the brain develops ingrained habits, it doesn't need to think anymore. Okay, things get done quickly and efficiently on automatic pilot, often in a very advantageous way. This creates a tendency to stick to routines, and only way breaking these is to confront the brain with new information. Presented with new information, the brain creates new connections and is revitalized. This is why it is so important to expose yourself to change, even if stepping outside your comfort zone means feeling a bit of anxiety. The effects of mental training have been scientifically demonstrated, according to Collins Hemingway and Shlomo Brzezinski in their book Maximum Brain Power: Challenging the Brain for Health and Wisdom. A mental training is beneficial on many levels. You begin exercising your brain by doing a certain task for the first time. He writes, at first it seems very difficult, but as you learn how to do it, the training is already working. The second time you realize that it's easier, not harder to do because you are getting better at it. This has a fantastic effect on a person's mood in or of itself. It is a transformation that affects not only the results obtained but also his or her self image. This description of a mental workout might sound a bit formal, but simply interacting with others, playing a game, for example, offers offers new stimuli and helps prevent the depression that come with solitude. Our neurons start to age while we are still in our 20s. This process is slowed, however, by intellectual activity, curiosity, and desire to learn. Dealing with new situations, learning something new every day, playing games, and interacting with other people seems to be essential anti aging strategies for the mind. Furthermore, a more positive outlook in this regard will yield greater mental benefits. Stress, accused of killing longevity. Many people seem older than they are. Research into the causes of premature aging has shown that stress has a lot to do with it because the body wears down much faster during periods of crisis. The American Institute of Stress investigated this degenerative process and concluded that most health problems are caused by stress. Researchers at the Heidelberg University Hospital conducted a study in which they sub- in which they made even more stressful by forcing him to solve complex math problems for 30 minutes. Afterwards, they took a blood sample. What they discovered was that his antibodies had reacted to stress and the same way they react to pathogens, activating the proteins that triggers an immune response. The problem is that this response not only neuralizes harmful agents, it also damages healthy cells, leading them to age prematurely. The South University of California conducted a similar study, taking data and samples from 39 women who had high levels of stress due to the illness of one of their children and comparing them to samples from women with healthy children and low level of stress. They found that stress promotes cellular aging by weakening cell structure known as telomeres, 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 which affect cellular regeneration and how our age cells age. As the study revealed, the greater the stress, the greater the degenerative effect on cells. How does stress work? These days, people live in a frantic phase, at a frantic phase, and in a nearly constant state of competition. At this fever pitch, stress is a normal, natural response to the information is being received by the body as potentially dangerous or problematic. Theoretically, this is a useful reaction as it helps us to survive in hostile surroundings. Over the course of our evolution, we have used this response to deal with difficult situations and to flee from predators. Predators. The alarm that goes off in our head make our neurons active. That pituitary gland, which produce hormones that release cortisotropin, which in turn circulates through the body via sympathetic nervous system. The adrenal gland is then triggered to release adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline raises our respiratory rate. Adrenaline raises our respiratory rate and pulse and prepares our muscle for action, getting the body to ready to react to perceived danger, while cortisol increases the release of dopamine and blood glucose, which is what gets us charged up and allow us to face challenges. These processes are in moderation beneficial. They help us overcome challenges in our daily lives. Nonetheless, the stress to which human beings are subjected today is clearly harmful. Stress has a degenerative effect over time. A sustained state of emergency affects the neurons associated with memory, as well as inhibiting the release of certain hormones, the absence of which can cause depression. Its secondary effects include irritability, insomnia, anxiety, and high blood pressure, such as though challenges are good for keeping mind and our body active, we should not adjust our high stress lifestyles in order to avoid the premature aging of our bodies. Be mindful about reducing stress. Whether or not the threats we perceive are real, stress is an easily identifiable condition that not only causes anxiety but is also highly psychomatic psychosomatic, affecting everything from our digestive system to our skin. अच्छा मुझे स्ट्रेस हो गया था. सही है. This is why prevention is so important in avoiding the toll that stress takes on us, and why many experts recommend practicing mindfulness. The central premise of this stress reduction method is focusing on the self, noticing our responses, even they are conditioned by habit, in order to be fully conscious of them. In this way, we connect with the here and now and limit thoughts that tend to spiral out of control. We have to learn to turn off the autopilot that's steering us in an endless loop. We all know people who snack while talking on the phone or watching the news. You ask them if the omelette they just ate had onion on it, and they can't tell you, says Roberto Alcibar, who abandoned his fast paced life to become a certified instructor of mindfulness after an illness threw him into a period of acute stress. One way to reach a state of mindfulness is through meditation, which helps filter the information that reaches us from the outside world. It can also be achieved through breathing exercises, yoga, and body scans. Achieving mindfulness involves a gradual process of training, but with a habit of practice, we can learn to focus our mind completely, which reduces stress and help us to live longer. A little stress, a little stress is good for you. While sustained, intense stress is known enemy of longevity and both mental and physical health. Low levels of stress has been shown to be beneficial. Low levels of stress have been shown to be beneficial. Low levels stress shown दर्शाया गया है. After observing a group of test subjects for more than 20 years, Dr. Howard S. Friedman, a psychology professor at the University of California, Riverside, discovered that people who maintained a low level of stress, who faced challenges and put their hearts and soul into their work in order to succeed, lived longer than those who chose a more relaxed lifestyle and retired earlier. From this, he concluded that a small dose of stress is a positive thing, as those who live with low level stress tend to develop healthier habits, smoke less, drink less alcohol. Given this, it is not surprising that many of the Supercentenarians, centenarians, people who live to be 110 or more, whom we will meet in this book, talk about having lived intense life, working well into old age. A lot of sitting will age you. Okay, sedentary lifestyle. A lot of sitting. A lot of sitting, nahi, sitting. A lot of sitting will age you. In the Western world in particular, the rise of sedentary behavior has led to numerous diseases such as hypertension and obesity, which in turn affect longevity. Spending too much time seated at work or at home not only reduces muscular or respiratory fitness but also increases appetite and curbs the desire to participate in activities. Being sedentary can lead to hypertension, imbalanced eating, cardiovascular diseases, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis means weak bones, and even certain kinds of cancers. Recent studies have shown a connection between a lack of physical activity and the progressive distortion of telomeres in the immune system, which ages those cells and in turn the organisms as a whole. As a whole, this is a problem at all life stages, not only among adults. Sedentary children suffer from high rates of obesity and all its associated health issues and risks, which is why it is so important to develop a healthy and active lifestyle at an early age. It is easy to be less sedentary if just take it just takes a bit of effort and a few changes to your routine. We can access a more active lifestyle that makes us feel better inside and outside. We just have to add a few ingredients to our everyday habits. Walk to work or just go on a walk for at least 20 minutes each day. Use your feet instead of an elevator or escalator. This is good for your posture, your muscle, and your respiratory system, among other things. Participate in social or leisure activities so that you don't have to spend so much time in front of the television. Replace your junk food with fruits and you will have less of an urge to snack more nutrients in your system. Get the right amount of sleep. 7 to 9 hours is good, but any more than that makes us lethargic. Play with children or pets or join a sports team. This this not only strengthens the body but also stimulates the mind and boosts boost boosts 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 self-esteem. Be conscious of your daily routine in order to detect harmful habits, replace them with more positive ones. By making these small changes, we can begin to renew our bodies and minds and increase our life expectancy. A model's best kept secret. Though we age both eternally, externally and internally, both physically and mentally, one of the things that tells us the most about people's age is their skin, which takes on different textures and colors according to the processes going on benefit beneath the surface. Most of those who make their living as models claim to sleep between 9 to 10 hours the night before a fashion show. This gives their skin a taut, wrinkle-free appearance and a healthy, radiant glow. Science has shown that sleep is a key anti-aging tool because when we sleep we generate melatonin, a hormone that when we sleep we generate melatonin, a hormone that occurs naturally in our bodies. The pineal gland produces it from the neurotransmitters serotonin according to our diurnal or nocturnal rhythms, and it plays a role in our sleep and waking cycle. A powerful antioxidant, melatonin, helps us to live longer and also offers the following benefits. It strengthens the immune system. It contains an element it contains an element that protects against cancer. It promotes the natural production of insulin. It slows the onset of Alzheimer's disease. It helps prevent osteoporosis and fight heart disease. For all those reasons, melatonin is a great ally in preserving youth. It should be noted, however, that melatonin production decreases after age 30. We can compensate this by eating a balanced diet and getting more calcium, soaking up moderate amount of sun each day, getting enough sleep, avoiding stress, alcohol, tobacco and caffeine, all of all of which make it harder to get a good night's rest, depriving us of the melatonin we need. Experts are trying to determine whether artificially stimulating production of melatonin might help slow the aging process, which would confirm the theory that we already carry the secret to longevity within us. Anti-aging attitudes. The mind has tremendous power over the body and how quickly it ages. Most doctors agree that the secret to keeping the body young is keeping the mind active, a key element of ikigai, and is in not caving in when we face difficulties throughout our lives. One study conducted at Yeshiva University found that the people who live the longest have two dispositional traits in common: a positive attitude and a high degree of emotional awareness. In other words, those who face challenges with a positive outlook and are able to manage their emotions are already well on their way towards longevity. A stoic attitude, serenity in the face of a setback, can also help keep you young, as it lowers anxiety and stress levels and stabilizes behavior. This can be seen in the greater life expectancy of certain cultures with unhurried, deliberate lifestyles. Many centenarians and supercentenarians have similar profiles. They have had full lives that were different at times, but they knew how to approach these challenges with a positive attitude and not to be overwhelmed by the obstacle they faced. Alexander Imik, who in 2014 became the world's oldest living man at age 111, knew he had good genes but understood that other factors contributed too. The life you live is equally or more important for longevity, he said in an interview with Reuters after being added to Guinness World of recorded in 2014, and an ode to longevity. During our stay in Ogimi, the village that holds the Guinness record for longevity, a woman who was about to turn 100 years of old sang the following song for us in a mixture of Japanese and local dialect. To keep healthy and hope have a long life, eat just eat just a little of everything with relish. Go to bed early, get up early, and then go out for a walk. We live each day with serenity. We enjoy the journey to keep healthy and have a long life. We get on well with all our friends. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. We happily enjoy all the seasons. The secret is to not get distracted by how old the fingers are, from the fingers to the head and back once again. If you keep moving with your fingers working, 100 years will come to you. We can now use our fingers to turn the page to the next chapter where we will where we'll look at look at the close relationship between longevity and discovering our life's mission. Chapter 3, from logotherapy to ikigai: how to live longer and better by finding your purpose. What is logotherapy? A colleague once asked Viktor Frankl to define his school of psychology in a single phrase, to which Frankl replied, "Well, in logotherapy, the patient sits up straight and has to listen to things that are on occasion hard to hear." The colleague had just described psychoanalysis psychoanalysis to him in the following terms. In psychoanalysis, the patient lies down on the couch and tells you things that are on occasion hard to say. Frankel explains that one of the first questions he would ask his patients was, why do you why do you not commit suicide? Usually the patient found good reasons not to and was not able to carry on. What then does logotherapy do? The answer is pretty clear. It helps you find reason to live. Logotherapy pushes patients to consciously discover their life's purpose in order to confront their neuroses. Their quest to fulfill their destiny then motivates them to press forward, breaking the mental chains of the past and overwhelming whatever obstacle they encounter along the way. The search for meaning. The search for purpose became a personal driving force that allowed Frankel to achieve his goals. The process of logotherapy can be summarized in these five steps. A person feels empty, frustrated, or anxious. The therapist shows him that what he is feeling is the desire to have a meaningful life. The patient discovers his life's purpose at that particular point in time. Of his own free will, the patient decides to accept or reject that destiny. This newfound passion for life helps him overcome obstacles and sorrows. Frankel himself would live and die for his principle and ideals. His experiences as a prisoner at Auschwitz showed him that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. It was something he had to go through alone, without any help, and it inspired him from the rest of his life. Fight for yourself. Existential frustration arises when our life is without purpose or when that purpose is skewed. In Frankel's view, however, there is no need to see this frustration as an anomaly or a symptom of neurosis. Instead, it can be positive thinking, a catalyst for change. Logotherapy does not see this frustration as mental illness the way other forms of therapies do, but rather as spiritual anguish, a natural and beneficial phenomena that drives those who suffer from it to seek a cure, whether on their own or with the help of others, and in so doing to find greater satisfaction in life. It helps them change their own destiny. Logotherapy enters the picture if the person needs help doing this, if he needs guidance in discovering his life's purpose and later in overcoming conflicts so he can keep moving towards his objective. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl cites one of the Nietzsche's famous aphorisms: He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. He who has a why to live for, he who has a why to live for, can bear with almost anyhow. Based on his own experience, Frankel believed that our health depends on the natural tension that comes from the comparing what we have accomplished so far with what we would like to achieve in the future. What we need then is not a peaceful existence, but a challenge we can strive to meet by applying all the skills at our disposal. Existential crisis, on the other hand, is typical of modern societies in which people do what they are told to do or what others do rather than rather than rather than what they want to do. They often try to fill the gap between what is expected of them and what they want for themselves with economic power or physical pleasures, or by numbing their senses. It can even lead to suicide. Sunday neurosis, for example, is what happens when, without the obligations and commitments of the work week, the individual realizes how empty he is inside. He has to find a solution. Above all, he has to find his purpose, his reason for getting out of bed, his ikigai. I feel empty inside. In a study conducted at the Vienna Polyclinic Hospital, Frankel's team found that 55% of the patients they interviewed were experiencing some degree of existential crisis. According to logotherapy, discovering one's purpose in life helps an individual fill that existential void. Frankel, a man who faced his problems and turned his objective into actions, could look back on his life in peace as he grew old. He did not have to envy those still enjoying their youth because he had amassed a broad set of experiences that showed he had lived for something. Page number 42. Page number 42. Better living through logotherapy. A few key ideas. We don't create the meaning of our life as certainly claimed, we discover it. We each have a unique reason for being, which can be adjusted or transformed many times or over the years. Just as very often brings about precisely the thing that was feared, excessive attention to a desire or hyperintentions can keep the desire from being fulfilled. Human can humor can help break negative cycles and reduce anxiety. The humor can help break negative cycle and reduce anxiety. We all have the capacity to do noble or terrible things. The side of the equation we end up on depends on our decision, not on the condition in which we find ourselves. In the pages that follow, we will look at four cases from Frankel's own practice in order to better understand the search for meaning and purpose. Case study: Viktor Frankl. In German concentration camps, as in those that would later be built in Japan and Korea, psychiatrists confirm that the prisoners with great chance of survival were those who had things they wanted to accomplish outside the camp, those who felt a strong need to get out of there alive. This was true of Frankel, who, after being released and successfully developing this school of logotherapy, realizes he had been the patient of his own practice. Frankel had a goal to achieve, and it made him persevere. He arrived at Auschwitz carrying a manuscript that contained all the theories and research he had compiled over the course of his career, ready for publication. When it was confiscated, when it was confiscated, he felt compelled to write it all over again, and the need to drove him and gave his life meaning amid the constant horror and doubt of the concentration camp. So much so, so much so that over the years, and especially when he fell ill with typhus, he would jot down fragments and keywords from the lost work on the scrap of paper he found. Case study: The American Diplomat. The American Diplomat. ओ भाई साहब, क्या बात है. Case study: The American Diplomat. An important an important North American diplomat went to Frankel went to Frankel to pick up where he left off with a course of treatment he had started 5 years earlier in the United States. When Frankel asked him why he would started he had started therapy in the first place. The diplomat answered that he hated his job and his country's international policies, which he had to follow and enforce. He, his American psychoanalyst, whom he had been seeing for years, insisted insisted he make peace with his father. He make peace with his father so that his government and his job, both representation of the paternal figure, would seem less disagreeable. Frankel, however, showed him in just a few sessions that his frustration was due to the fact that he wanted to pursue a different career, and the diplomat concluded his treatment with that idea in mind. 5 years later, the former diplomat informed Frankel that he had been working during that time in a different profession and that he was happy. In Frankel's view, the man not only didn't need all those years of psychoanalysis, he also could not even really be considered a patient in need of therapy. He was simply someone in search of a new life's purpose. As soon as as soon as he found it, his life took on deeper meaning. Case study: the suicidal mother. The mother of a boy who had died at age 11 was admitted to Frankel's clinic after she tried to kill herself and her other son. It was his other son, paralyzed since birth, who kept her from carrying out her plan. He did believe his life had a purpose. If his mother killed them both, it would keep him from achieving his goals. The woman shared her story in a group session. To help her, Frankel asked another woman to imagine hypothetical situation in which she lay on her deathbed, old and wealthy but childless. The woman insisted that in that case she would have felt her life had been a failure. When the suicidal mother was asked to perform the same exercise, imagining herself on a deathbed, she looked back and realized that she had done everything in her power for her children, for both of them. She had given her paralyzed son a good life, and he had turned into a kind, reasonably, reasonably happy person. To this, she added, crying, "As for myself, I can look back peacefully on my life, for I can say my life was full of meaning, and and I have tried to live it fully. I have done my best. I have done my best for my son. My life was no failure." In this way, by imagining herself on her deathbed and looking back, the suicidal mother found the meaning that, though she was not aware of it, her life already had. The case study: the grief stricken doctor. An elderly doctor, unable to overcome the deep depression into which he had fallen after the death of his wife 2 years earlier, went to Frankel for help. Instead of giving him advice or analyzing his condition, Frankel asked him what would have happened if he had been the one who died first. The doctor, horrified, answered that he it would have been terrible for his poor wife, that she would have suffered tremendously. To which Frankel responded, "You see, doctor, you have spared her all that suffering, but the price you have to pay for this is to survive and mourn her." The doctor didn't say another word. He left Frankel's office in peace. After taking the therapist's hand in his own, he was unable able to tolerate the pain in place of his beloved wife. His life had been given a purpose. Morita therapy. In the same decade that logotherapy came into being, a few years earlier, in fact, Soma Morita created his own purpose centered therapy in Japan. It proved to be effective in the treatment of neurosis, obsessive compulsive disorder, and post traumatic stress. In order to being a psychotherapist, Soma Morita was a Zen Buddhist, and his therapist left a lasting spiritual mark on Japan. Many Western forms of therapy focus on controlling or modifying the patient's emotion. In the West, we tend to believe that what we think influences our how I feel, in which in turn influences how we act. In contrast, Morita therapy focuses on teaching patients to accept their emotions without trying to control them, since their feelings will change as a result of their actions. In addition to accepting the patient's emotions, Morita therapy seeks to create new emotions on the basis of action. According to Morita, these emotions are learned through experience and repetitions. Morita therapy is not meant to eliminate symptoms. Instead, it teaches us to accept our desires, anxieties, fears, and worries and let them go. As Morita writes in his book Morita Therapy and the True Nature of Anxiety Based Disorders, in feelings, it is best to be wealthy and generous. Morita explained the idea of letting go of negative feelings with the following fable. A donkey that is tied to a post by a rope will keep walking around the post in an attempt to free itself, only to become more immobilized and attached to the post. The same thing applies to the people with obsessive thinking who became more trapped in their own suffering when they try to escape from their fears and discomforts. The basic principles of Morita therapy: accept your feelings. If we have obsessive thoughts, we should not try to control them or get rid of them. If we do, they become more intense. Regarding human emotions, the Zen master would say if we try to get rid of one wave with another, we end up with an infinite sea. We don't create our feelings, they simply come to us and we have to accept them. The trick is welcoming them. Morita likened emotion to the weather. We can't predict or control them, we can only observe them. To this point, he often quoted that Vietnamese monk Thai Nai Ha. He would say, "Hello, solitude, how are you today? Come sit with me, and I will care for you. Do what you should be doing." करो जो तुम्हें करते होना चाहिए. We shouldn't focus on eliminating symptoms because recovery will come on its own. We should focus instead on the present moment, and if we are suffering, on accepting that suffering. Above all, we should avoid intellectualizing the situation. We should avoid intellectualizing the situation. The therapist's mission is to develop the patient's characters so he or she can face any situation. And character is grounded in these things we do. Morita therapy do not offer its patient's explanation, but rather allows them to learn from their actions and activities. It doesn't tell you how to meditate or how to keep a diary the way Western therapists do. It is up to the patient to make discoveries through experience. Discover your life's purpose. We can control we can't control our emotions, but we can take charge of our actions every day. This is why we should have a clear sense of our purpose and always keep Murta's mantra in mind. What we do need to doing, what do we need, what we need, what do we need to be doing right now? What actions should we be taking? The key to achieving this is having dare to look inside yourself to find your ikigai. Hmm. Find your ikigai. Okay. The four phases of Morita therapy. Morita's original therapy, which lasts 15 to 21 days, consists of the following stages: isolation and rest, 5 to 7 days. During the first week of treatment, the patient rests in a room without any external stimuli. No television, book, family, friends, or speaking. All the patient has his has his thoughts. He lies down He lies down for most of the day and visited regularly by the therapist, who tries to avoid interacting with him as much as possible. The therapist simply advises the patient to continue observing the rise and fall of his emotion as he lies there. When the patient gets bored and wants to start doing things again, he is ready to move on the next stage of therapy. Light occupational therapy, 5 to 7 days. In this stage, the patient performs repetitive tasks in silence. One of these is keeping a diary about his thoughts and feelings. The patient goes outside after a week of being certain, takes walk in nature and does breathing exercise. He also starts doing simple activities such as gardening, drawing, painting. During this stage, the patient is still not allowed to talk to anyone except the therapist. Occupational therapy, 5 to 7 days. In this stage, the patient performs tasks that requires physical movement. Dr. Morita liked to take his patient to mountains or to chop wood. In addition to physical tasks, the patient is also immersed in other activities such as writing, painting, or making ceramics. The patient can speak. हेलो। ठीक है, अभी नहीं गा रहा, मैं आऊँगा बाद में। The patient can speak with others at this stage, but only about the tasks at hand. The return to social life and the real world. The patient leaves the hospital and is reintroduced to social life, but maintains the practices of meditation and occupational therapy developed during treatment. Developed during treatment. The idea is to re enter society as a new person with a sense of purpose and without being controlled by social or emotional pressures. Naikan meditation. Mohita was great Zen master of Naikan in introspective meditation. Most of his therapy draws on his knowledge and master of this school, which centers on three questions. The individual must ask him or herself, what have I what have I received from person X? What have I given to person X? What problems have I caused person X? Through these reflections, we stop identifying others as the cause of our problems and deepen our own sense of responsibility. As Morita said, if you are angry and want to fight, think about it for 3 days before coming to blows. After 3 days, the intense desire to fight will pass on its own. And now, Ikigai, logotherapy, and Morita therapy are both grounded in a personal, unique experience that you can access without therapists नहीं, therapists, without therapists. You can access without therapists, that you can access without therapist, therapist, therapists, or spiritual retreats. The mission of finding your ikigai, your existential fuel. Once you find it, it is only a matter of having the courage and making the effort to stay on the right path. In the following chapters, we will take a look on the basic tools you will need to get moving along that path, finding flow in the task you have chosen to do, eating in a balanced and mindful way, doing low intensity exercise, and learning not to give in when difficulties arise. In order to do this, you have to accept that the world, like the people who live in it, is imperfect. Okay, क्या बात है? But that it is still full of opportunities for growth and achievement. Are you ready to throw yourself into passion as if it were the most important thing in the world? Chapter 3 completed, and 51 pages also completed with it. And I have been speaking for 1 hour and 24 minutes, and this has been the longest spoken I have spoken this year. And I think I should complete this book. 50 pages I have completed in 1.5 minute, 1.5 hour, 1.5 hours. So in 6 hour I should complete कर देनी चाहिए. I think in 6 hours or under 6 hours I should complete reading this book. Chapter 4 is find flow in everything you do. How to turn work and free time into spaces for growth. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Aristotle. Wow, क्या बात है. Going with the flow. Imagine you are skiing down one of the following slopes. Powdery snow flies up on both sides. You like white sand. Conditions are perfect. You are entirely focused on skiing as well as you can. As well as you can. You know exactly how to move at each movement. There is no future, no past. There is only the present. You feel the snow, your skis, and your body and your consciousness united as a single entity. You are completely immersed in this experience, not thinking about or distracted by anything else. Your ego dissolves and you become part of what you are doing. This is the kind of experience Bruce Lee described with his famous "Be water, my friend." We have felt our senses of time vanish when we lose ourselves in activity we enjoy. We start cooking and before we know it, in several hours we have passed. We spent an afternoon with a book and forgot how the world going by until we notice the sunset and realize we haven't eaten dinner. We go surfing and don't realize how many hours we have spent in the water until the next day when our muscles ache. The opposite can also happen when we have to complete a task we don't want to do. Every minute feels like a lifetime, and we can't stop looking at our watch. As the quip attributed to Einstein goes, put your hand on the hot stove. अपना हाथ एक गर्म तवे या स्टोव पर रखो 1 मिनट के लिए और तुम्हें ऐसा लगेगा जैसे 1 घंटा है। लेकिन किसी प्रीटी गर्ल सुंदर लड़की प्रीटी गर्ल का मतलब सुंदर नहीं होता, प्रीटी गर्ल के साथ 1 घंटा बैठो और ये ऐसा लगेगा अभी 1 मिनट हुआ है। दिस इज रिलेटिविटी। The funny thing is that someone else might really enjoy the same task, but we want to finish as quickly as possible. What makes us enjoy doing something so much that we forgot about whatever worries we might have while we do it? We are when we are happiest. These questions can help us discover our ikigai, the power of flow. These questions are also at the heart of psychologist Mihalai किसी किसी जो बहुत लंबा नाम है research into the experience of being completely immersed in what we are doing. Psychism called this state flow and described it as the pleasure, delight, creativity, and process when we are completely immersed in life. There is no magic recipe for finding happiness, for living according to your ikigai, but one key ingredient is the ability to reach this state of flow and through this state we to have an optimal experience. Now a water break for my throat as my I'm feeling that I'm feeling that I have a heavy throat or what should I say? I don't have vocabulary to describe my situation right now. In order to achieve this optimal experience, we have to focus on increasing the time we spend on activities that bring us to this state rather than allowing ourselves to get caught up in the activity that offers immediate pleasure, like eating too much, abusing drug or alcohol, or stuffing ourselves with chocolate in front of the TV. As Milhalai asserts in his book Flow, the psychology of optimal experience, flow is the state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience itself is so enjoyable that people will do it even at greater cost for the sheer sake of doing it. It is not only creative professionals who require the high doses of concentration that promote flow. Most athletes, chess players, and engineers also spend much of their time on activities that bring them to this stage. According to Mihalai's research, a chess player feels the same way upon entering a state of flow as a mathematician working on a formula or a surgeon performing an operation. A professor of psychology, Mihaly analyzed data from people around the world and discovered that flow is the same among individuals of all ages and cultures. In the New York and Okinawa, we all reached a state of flow in the same way. But what happens to our mind when we are in that state? When we flow, we are focused on a concrete task without any distractions. Our mind is in order. The opposite occurs when we try to do something while our mind is in on other things. If you often find ourselves losing focus while working on the something you consider important, there are several strategies you can employ to increase your chances of achieving flow. Achieving flow. Strategy 1. Choose a difficult task, but not too difficult. Okay, understood. Scaffold's model encourage का मतलब होता है प्रोत्साहित नहीं, प्रोत्साहित तो पता नहीं. Scaffold's model encourages us to take on tasks that we have a chance of completing, but that are slightly outside of our comfort zone. Every task, sport, or job has a set of rules, and we need a set of skills to follow them. If the rules for completing a task or achieving a purpose are too basic relative to our skill set, we will likely to get bored. Activities that are too easy lead to apathy. If, on the other hand, we assign ourselves a task that is too difficult, we won't have the skills to complete it and will almost certainly give up and feel frustrated to boot. The ideal is to find a middle path, something aligned with our abilities but just a bit of a stretch, so we experience it as a challenge. This is what Ernest Hemingway meant when he said, "Something I write better than I can. Sometimes I write better. Sometimes I write better than I can." We want to see challenges through to the end because we enjoy the feeling of pushing ourselves. Bertrand Russell experienced a similar idea when he said, "To be able to concentrate for a considerable amount of time is essential to difficult achievement." If you are a graphic designer, learn a new software program for your next project. If you are a programmer, use a new programming language. If you are a dancer, try to incorporate into your next routine a movement that has seemed impossible for years. Add a little something extra, something that takes you out of your comfort zone. Even doing something as simple as reading means following certain rules, having certain abilities, योग्यता, knowledge, ज्ञान. If we set our if we set out to read a book on quantum mechanics for specialists in physics without being a specialist in physics ourselves, we will probably give up. We will probably give up after a few minutes. On the other hand, on the spectrum, if we already know everything a book has to tell us, we will get bored right away. However, if the book is appropriate to our knowledge and abilities and builds on what we already know, we will immerse ourselves in our reading and time will flow. This pleasure and satisfaction are evidence that we are in tune with our ikigai. अच्छा, काम अगर इजी होगा तो बोर्डम हो जाएगी, चैलेंजिंग होगा तो उसमें एक फ्लो आ जाएगा एक टाइम के बाद. अगर अगर लिमिटेड बियॉन्ड आवर एबिलिटीज़ होगा तो उससे एंजाइटी पैदा होगी. ठीक है. Strategy 2. Have a clear, concrete objective. Choose a difficult task, but don't not too difficult. Video games played in moderation, board games, and sports are great ways to achieve flow because the objective tends to be very clear. Be it your rival or your own record while following a set of explicitly defined rules. Unfortunately, the opposite isn't quite as clear in most situations. According to a study by Boston Consulting Group, when asked about their bosses, the number one complaint of their employees at multinational corporations is that they don't communicate the team's mission clearly, and that as a result, the employees don't know what their objectives are. What often happens, especially in big companies, is that the executives get lost in the details of obsessive planning, creative strategy, and to hide the fact that they don't know have a clear objective. It's like heading out to sea without a map or but no destination. Okay, it's like heading out to sea with a map but no destination. Okay. It is much more important to have compass pointing to a concrete objective than to have a map. Joy Ito, director of MIT Media Lab, encourages us to use the principle of compass over map. ओके कंपास ओवर मैप कंपास होगा तो दिशा दिखाएगा दिशा जरूरी है मैप से ज़्यादा एज अ टूल टू नेविगेट अवर वर्ल्ड ऑफ uncertainty. In the book Whiplash: How to Survive Our Faster Future, he and Jeff Howe writes, in an increasingly unpredictable world, moving even more quickly, a detailed map may lead you into deep in the woods at an unnecessarily high cost. A good compass, though, will always take you where you need to go. It does not mean that you should start your journey without any idea where you are going. What it does mean is understanding that while the path to your goal may not be straight, you will finish faster and more efficiently than you would have if you had trudged along a pre planned route. In business, the creative professions, and education alike, it is important to reflect on what we hope to achieve before starting to work, study, or make something. We should ask ourselves questions such as: what is my objective for today's session in the studio? How many words am I going to write today for the article coming out next month? What is my team's mission? How fast will I set the metronome tomorrow in order to play the sonata at a allegro tempo by the end of the week? Having a clear objective is important in achieving flow, but we also have to know how to leave it behind when we get down to business. Once the journey has begun, we should keep this objective in mind without obsessing over it. When Olympic athletes compete for a gold medal, they can't stop to think of how pretty the medal is. They have to be present in the moment. They have to flow. If they lose focus for a second thinking about how proud they will be to show their medal to their parents, they will almost certainly commit an error at a critical moment and will not win the competition. One common example of this is writer's block. Imagine that a writer has to finish a novel in 3 months. The objective is clear. The problem is that the writer can't stop obsessing over it. Every day she wakes up thinking, I have to write the novel. And every day she sets about reading the newspaper and cleaning the house. Every evening she feels frustrated and promises she will go to work the next day. Days, weeks, and months passes. The writer still hasn't gotten any down on the stage, when all it would have taken was to sit down and get that first word out, then the second, to flow with the project, expressing her ikigai. As soon as you take the first small step, your anxiety will disappear and you will achieve a pleasant flow in the activity you were doing. Getting back to Albert Einstein, a happy man is too satisfied with the present to dwell on the future. Strategy 3, concentrate on a single task. ये बहुत जरूरी है. This is perhaps one of the greatest obstacles we face today. With so much technology and so many distractions, we are listening to a video on YouTube while writing an email when suddenly a chat prompt pops up and we answer it. Then our smartphone vibrates in our pocket. Just as soon as we respond to the message, we are back at our computer, logging on to Facebook. Pretty soon 30 minutes have passed and we have forgot that the email we are writing was supposed to be about. This also happens sometimes when we put on a movie with dinner and don't realize how delicious the salmon was until we are taking the last bite. We often think that combining tasks will save us time, but scientific evidence shows that it has the opposite effect. Even those who claim to be good at multitasking are not very productive. In fact, they are some of the least productive people. Our brain can take in millions of bits in information but can only actually process a few dozen of per second. Okay. When we say we are multitasking, what we are really doing is switching back and forth between tasks very quickly. Unfortunately, we are not computers adept at parallel processing. We end up spending all our energy alternating between tasks instead of focusing on doing one of them well. Concentrating on one thing at a time may be the single most important factor in achieving flow. According to Mihaly, in order to focus on task we need to be or to be ठीक है. फोकस पाने के लिए सबसे ज़रूरी है डिस्ट्रैक्शन फ्री एनवायरनमेंट के लिए. और दूसरा, हम जो कर रहे हैं हर पल में उसके ऊपर कंट्रोल होना. टेक्नोलॉजी इज़ ग्रेट इफ़ वी आर इन कंट्रोल ऑफ इट. इट्स it is not so great if it take control of you. Control if you are not very disciplined. You ask our brains to switch back and forth between tasks. We waste time, make more mistakes, things they tended to do at once. The students are listening message on their smartphone and sometimes checking on their Twitter timeline. Each group of students was shown a screen with several red and several blue arrows. The objective of this exercise was to count the red in for one very simple reason. They got distracted by the blue arrows. Their brains were trained to pay attention to every stimulus, regardless of its importance. While the brains of the other students were trained to focus on a single task, in their case, counting the red arrows and ignoring the blue ones. Other studies indicate that working on several things at once our st- Other studies indicate that working on several things once lowers our productivity by at least 60% and IQ by more than 10 points. One study funded by Swedish Council for Working Life and Social Research found that a sample group of more than 4,000 young adults between the age of 20 and 24 who were asleep felt less connected to the community at school and were more likely to show sign of depression. What can we do to avoid falling victim to this flow impeding flow impeding epidemic? How can we train our brains to focus our chances of reaching a state of flow, thereby getting in touch with our life? Before you turn off your phone, before you achieve flow, there is nothing more important than the task you have chosen to do during this time. If this seems too extreme, enable the do not disturb function so not only the people closest to you can contact you in case of emergency. Designate one day of the week, perhaps Saturday or Sunday, a day of technological fasting, making exceptions only for e-readers without Wi-Fi or MP3 players. Go to a cafe that doesn't have a Wi-Fi. Read and respond to an email only once or per day. Define those times clearly and stick to them. Try the Pomodoro technique. Get yourself a kitchen timer. Some are made to look like Pomodoro or to Mato, and commit to working on a single task as long as it's running. The Pomodoro technique recommends 25 minutes of work and 5 minutes of rest for each cycle, but you can also do 50 minutes of work and 10 minutes of rest. Find the pace Find the pace that's best for you. The most important thing is to be disciplined in completing each cycle. Start your work session with a ritual you enjoy and end with it a reward. Train your mind to return to the present when you find yourself getting distracted. Practice mindfulness and another form of meditation. Go for a walk or swim, whatever you will help to get centered again. Work in a space where you will not be distracted. If you cannot do this at home, go to a library, at a cafe, or if your task involves playing the saxophone, a music studio. If you find that your surroundings continue to distract you, keep looking until you find the right place. Divide each day activity into groups of relative tasks and assign each group its own place and time. For example, if you are writing a magazine article, you could do research and take notes at home in the morning, write in the library in the afternoon, and edit on the couch at night. Bundle routine tasks such as sending out invoices, making phone calls, and so on, and do them all at once. Flow in Japan. Takumis, engineers, geniuses, and otakus. Water break. What do takumis, artisans, engineer, inventor, and otakus, fan of anime and manga, otakus, have in common? They all understand the importance of flowing with their ikigai at all times. One widespread stereotype about people in Japan is that they are exceptionally dedicated and hardworking, even though some Japanese people say they look like they are working harder than they really are. There is no doubt, though, about their ability to be completely observed in a task or about their perseverance when there is a problem to be solved. One of the first words one learned when Japanese lesson is ganbaru, which means to preserve, preserve, or to stay firm by doing one's best. Japanese people often apply themselves to even the most basic tasks with an intensity that borders on obsession. We see this in all kind of contexts, from the retirees taking meticulous care of their rice fields in the mountains of Nagano to the college students working on the weekend shift in convenience stores known as konbinis. If you go to Japan, you will experience this attention to detail firsthand at almost every transaction. Walk into one of the stores that sell handcrafted objects in Naha, Kanazawa, or Kyoto, and you will also discover that Japan is a treasure trove of a traditional craft work. The people of Japan have a unique talent for creating new technologies while preserving artisanal, traditional, and techniques. The art of the Takumi. Toyota employs artisans who are able to make a certain type of screw by hand. These Takumi or expert in particular manual skill are extremely important to Toyota and they are hard to replace. Some of them are the only people who know how to perform this exact skill and it does not seem as though as a new generation is going to the metal take up the metal mantle. Turntable needles are also another example. They are reproduced almost exclusively in Japan, where you can find the last remaining people who know how to use the machinery required to make these precision needles who are trying to pass their knowledge to their descendants. We met Takumi on a visit to Kumano, a small town near Hiroshima. We were there for the day, working on a photo essay for one of the most famous brand of makeup brushes in the West. The billboard welcoming visitors to Kumano shows a mascot holding a large brush. In addition to the brush factories, the town is full of little houses and vegetable gardens. Heading further in, you can see several Shinto shrines at the base of the mountains that surrounded the town. We spent hours taking photos in factories full of people in orderly rows, each doing a single task, such as painting the handles of the brushes or loading boxes of them onto trucks. Before we realized, before we realized, we still hadn't seen anyone actually putting bristles into the brush heads. After we asked about this and got the runaround several times, the president of one company agreed to show us how it was done. He led us out of the building and asked us to get into his car. After a 5 minute drive, we parked next to the next to another smaller structure. Climbed the stairs. He opened a door and we walked into the small room filled with the window that let in lovely natural light. In the middle of the room was a woman wearing a mask. You could see only her eyes. She was so focused on choosing individual bristles for the brushes, gracefully moving her hands and fingers, using scissors and combs to sort out the bristles, that she didn't even notice our presence. Her movements were so quick it was hard to tell what she was doing. The president of the company interrupted her to let her know that we had been taking few photos as she worked. We would be taking. We couldn't see her mouth, but the glint in her eyes and cheerfulness inflection in her speech let us know she was smiling. She looked happy and proud talking about her work and responsibility. We had to use extremely fast shutter speed to capture her movements. Her hands danced and flowed in concert, concert with her tools and the bristles she was sorting. The president told us that this Takumi was one of the most important people in the company, even though she was hidden away in a separate building. Every brush the company made passed through her hands. Steve Jobs in Japan. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs was a big fan of Japan. Not only did he visit the Sony factories in 1980s and adopt many of their methods when he founded Apple, he was also captivated by the simplicity and quality of Japanese porcelain in Kyoto. It was not, however, an artisan from Kyoto who won Steve Jobs' devotion, but rather than Takumi from Toyoma named Yukio Sagunaga. Sakunaga. He used a technique called Itsusetuyaki known by only a few. On a visit to Kyoto, Jobs heard of an exhibition of Sakunaga's work. He immediately understood that there was something special about Sakunaga's porcelain. As a matter of fact, he bought as a matter of fact, he bought several cups, vases, and plates and went back to the show three times that week. Jobs returned to Kyoto several times over the course of his life in search of inspiration and ended up meeting in Sakunaga in person. It is said that It is said that Jobs had many questions for him, almost all of them about the fabrication process and the type of porcelain porcelain he used. Sakunaga explained that he used white porcelain he extracted himself from mountain in the Toyama prefecture, making him making him the only artist of his ilk familiar with the fabrication process of porcelain objects from their origin in the mountains to their final form, an authentic takumi. Job was so impressed that he threw better of it when he heard that Takunaga said he must purchase from him this request was the best 12 and sent them to the Job's family. Ever and Sony philosophy, especially Zen and cuisine, especially sushi, simplicity and attention to detail. It is not only a lazy simplicity but a sophisticated one that searches out new frontiers, always taking the object and the body and mind or the cuisine to the next level. According to one's ikigai, as Millahais would say, the key is always having a meaningful challenge to overcome in order to maintain flow. The documentary Zero Dreams of Sushi gives another example of being making sushi every day for more than 80 years and owns a small sushi restaurant near the Ginza subway station in Tokyo. He and his son go every day to the famous Suzuki Tsukizi fish market and choose the best fish to bring back to the restaurant. In the documentary, we see one of the Zero's apprentices learning to make tamago, a thin, slightly sweet omelette. No matter how hard he tries, he can't get Zero's approval. He keeps practicing for years until he finally does. Why does the apprentice refuse to give up? Doesn't he get bored cooking eggs every day? No, because baking sushi is his ikigai too. Both Jiro and his son are culinary artists. They don't get bored when they cook. They achieve a state of flow. They enjoy themselves completely when they are in the kitchen. That in their close relationship between even after receiving a 3-star rating from they never considered opening another company. Instead, they value good working conditions. Like Yukio Sakunaga begins his work at source. When they get down to work, both become one with the object they work and where, according to Shintoism, forest and object sets out to create something. His or her responsibility is to use nature to give it life while respecting that nature at every moment. During this process, the artisan becomes one with the object and flows with it. An iron worker would say that metal has a life of its own, just as someone making ceramic would say that the clay does. The Japanese are skilled at bringing nature and technology together, not man versus nature, but rather a union of the two. The purity of Ghibli. There are those who say that Shinto value of being connected with nature is vanishing. One of the harshest critics of this loss is another artist with a clearly defined ikigai, Hayao Miyazaki, director of animated films produced by Studio Ghibli. In nearly all of his films, we see humans, technology, fantasy, and nature in a state of conflict, and in the end coming together. One of the most poignant metaphors in his film Spirited Away is an obese spirit covered in trash that represents the pollution of the river. In Miyazaki's film, forests have personalities, trees have feelings, and robots will befriend birds. Considered a national treasure by the Japanese government, Miyazaki is an artist capable of becoming completely absorbed in his art. He uses a cell phone from his late 1990s and he makes his entire team draw by hand. He directs his film by re-rendering on paper even the tiniest detail, achieving flow by drawing, not by using a computer. Thanks to this obsession on the director's part, Studio Ghibli is one of the only studios in the world where almost the entire production process is carried out using traditional techniques. Those who have visited Studio Ghibli know that it is fairly typical on a given Sunday to see a solitary individual tucked away in a corner, hard at work, a man in single cloth who will greet them with an Ohio hello without looking up. Miyazaki is so passionate about his work that he spends many Sundays in the studio, enjoying the state of flow, putting his ikigai above all else. Visitors know that under no circumstances is one to bother Miyazaki, who is known for his quick temper, if he is interrupted while drawing. In 2013, Miyazaki announced that he was going to retire. To commemorate, commemorate his retirement, the television station NHK made a documentary showing him his last days at work. He is doing nearly every scene of the film. In one scene, several of his colleagues are seen coming out of a meeting, and there he is drawing in a corner, paying no attention to them. In another scene, he is also walking to the work on December 30, a national holiday in Japan, and opening the doors of Studio Ghibli so he can spend the day there drawing alone. Miyazaki can't stop drawing. The day after his retirement, instead of going on vacation or staying at home, he went to the Studio Ghibli and sat there, sat down to draw. His colleagues put on their best poker faces, not knowing what to say. 1 year later, he announced he wouldn't make any more much feature films, but that he would keep on drawing until the day he died. Can someone really retire if he is passionate about what he does? The recluses. It is not only the Japanese who have this capacity. There are artists and scientists all over the world with strong and clear ikigais. They do what they loved until their dying days. The last thing Einstein wrote before closing his eyes forever was formula that attempted to unite all the forces of the universe in a single theory. When he died, he was still doing what he loved. If he hadn't been a physicist, he said he would have been happy as a musician. When he wasn't focused on physics or mathematics, he enjoyed playing a violin, reaching in a state of flow while working on his formula or playing music. His true ikigai brought him endless pleasure. Many such artists might seem misanthropic, hate mankind, misanthropic, hate mankind, or reclusive, reclusive, reclusive. But but what they are really doing is protecting the time that brings them happiness, sometimes at the expense of their aspect of their life. They are outliers who applied the principles of flow to their lives to an extreme. Another example of this kind of artist is the novelist Haruki Murakami. He sees only a close circle of friends and appears in public in Japan only once a few years. Artists know how important it is to protect their space, control their environment, and be free of distraction if they want to flow. But what happens when we have to say to do laundry, mow the lawn, or to attend to paperwork? Is there a way to make these mundane tasks enjoyable? Near the Shinjuku subway station is one of the neural centers of Tokyo. There is a supermarket that still employs elevator operators. The elevator the elevators are fairly standard and could easily be operated by the customers, but the store prefers to provide the service of someone holding the door open for you, pushing the button for your floor, and bowing as you exit. If you ask around, you will learn that there is one elevator operator who has been doing the same job since 2004. She is always smiling and enthusiastic about her work. How is she able to enjoy such a job? Doesn't she get bored doing something so repetitive? On closer inspection, it becomes clear that the it clears it becomes clear that the elevator operator is not just pushing the button that but is instead performing a whole sequence of movements. She begins by greeting the customer with a song like salutations, followed by a bow and a welcoming wave of the hand. Then she presses the elevator button for with a graceful movement as though she is a geisha offering a client a cup of tea. Mihalai called this microflow. We all have been bored in a we all have been bored in a class at a conference and started dawdling to keep ourselves entertained, or whistled while painting a wall, or we are not really being challenged, but we get bored and add a layer of complexity to amuse ourselves. Our ability to turn routine tasks into moments of microflow into something we enjoy is to keep our being happy, since we all have to do such tasks. Even Bill Gates watches the disease every night. He says he enjoys it, that it helps him relax and clear his mind, and that he tries to do it every little better each day, following an established order or set of rules he made for himself. Plates every day, forks second, and so on. It is of his daily movements of microflow. Richard Feynman, Richard Feynman, one of the most important physicists of all time, also took pleasure in routine tasks. W. Daniel Hillis, one of the founder of the supercomputer manufacturer Thinking Machines, and hired Feynman to work on the development of a computer that could handle parallel processing, which he was already world famous. He says Feynman showed up on his first day of work and said, "Okay, boss, what's my assignment?" They didn't have anything prepared, so they asked him to work on a certain mathematical problem. He immediately realized that they were giving him an irrelevant task to keep him busy and said, "That sounds like a bunch of baloney. Give me something really, give me something real to do." So they sent him to a nearby shop to buy office supplies, and he completed his task assignment with a smile on his face. When he didn't have something important to do or needed to rest his mind, Feynman dedicated himself to microflowing, say painting the office walls. Weeks later, after visiting the Thinking Machines offices, a group of investors declared, "You have a Nobel laureate in the air painting walls and soldering circuit." Instant vacations, getting there through meditation. Training the mind can get us to place of flow more quickly. Meditation is one of the meditation is one way to exercise our mental math. There are many types of meditation. but they all have the same objective: calming the mind, observing our thoughts and emotion, and centering our focus on a single object. Practice involved after just one session. By fixing your attention on the air moving in and out of your nose, you can slow the torrent of your thoughts and clear your mental horizons. If we want to get better at reaching a state of flow, meditation is excellent antidote to our smartphone and notification constantly clamoring for our attention. One of the most common mistakes among people starting to meditate is worrying about doing it right, achieving absolute mental silence, or reaching nirvana. The most important thing is to focus on the journey. Since the mind is a constant swirl of thought, ideas, and emotions, slowing down the centrifuge, even for seconds, can help us feel more rested and leave us with a sense of clarity. In fact, one of the things we learned in the practice of meditation is not to worry about anything that flits across our mental screen. The idea of the idea of killing our boss might flash into our mind, but we simply label it as thought and let it pass like a cloud without judging or rejecting it. It is only a thought, one of the 60,000 we have every day, according to some experts. Meditation generates alpha and theta brain waves. For example, for those experienced in meditation, these waves appear right away, while it might take an hour to for a moment to experience them. These relaxing brain waves are the ones that are activated right before we fall asleep, as we lie in the sun or right after taking a hot bath. We all carry a spa with us everywhere we go. It's just a matter of knowledge how to get in. Something anyone can do with a bit of practice. Bit of practice. Humans as ritualistic beings. Life is inherently ritualistic. We could argue. We could argue that humans naturally follow rituals that keeps us busy. In some modern cultures, we have been forced out of our ritualistic lives to pursue goals after goals in order to be seen as successful. But throughout history, humans have always been busy. We work hunting, cooking, farming, exploring, and raising families. Activities that were structured as rituals to keep us busy throughout our days. But in an unusual way, rituals still permeate permeate daily life and busy business practices in modern Japan. The main religion in Japan, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Shintoism are the ones in which these rituals are more important than absolute rules. When doing business in Japan, process matters, manners, and how you work on something is more important than the final result. Whether this is good or bad for the economy is beyond the scope of this book. What is indisputable, though, is that finding flow in the ritualistic workplace is much easier than in one in which we are continually stressed out trying to achieve unclear goals set by our bosses. Ritual give us clear rules and objective, which help us enter a state of flow. When we have only a big goal in front of us, we might feel lost and overwhelmed by it. Rituals helps Rituals help us by giving us the process, the sub steps on the path to achieving a goal. When confronted with a big goal, try to break it down into parts and then attack each part by one. Focus on enjoying your daily rituals, using them as tools to enter a state of flow. Don't worry about the outcome, it will come naturally. Happiness is in the doing, not in the result. As a rule of thumb, remind yourself rituals over goals. Rituals over goals. The happiest people are not the ones who achieve the most. They are the ones who spend more time than others in a state of flow. Using state of flow like Ikigai. After reading this chapter, you should have a better idea of which activities in your life make you enter flow. Write all of them on a piece of paper, then ask yourself these questions. What do the activities that drive you to flow have in common? What do you do? What do those activities drive you to flow? For example, are all the activities you most like doing ones that are for example, are all the activities you most like doing ones that are practiced alone or with other people? Do you like flow more when doing things that requires you to move your body or just to think? In the answer in the answer to these questions, you might find the underlying ikigai that drives your life. If you don't, then keep searching by going deeper into what you like by spending more of the time in the activity that make you flow. Also try new things that are not on the list or what makes you flow by but that are similar and that are curious about. For example, if philosophy photography is something that drives you into flow, you could also try painting. You might even like it more. Or if you love snowboarding, have never tried surfing, flow is mysterious. It is a muscle. It is like a muscle. The more you train it, the more you will flow, and the closer you will be to your ikigai. So chapter 4 is complete, and 86 pages of the book Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long life and happy life is completed. Hmm. Okay. Today I will read chapter 4 also as okay, chapter 4 also. Okay. Master of longevity. Words of wisdom from the longest living people in the world. When we started working on this book, we didn't want to just research the factors that contribute to a long and happy life. We wanted to hear from the true masters of this art. The interviews we conducted in Okinawa merit their own chapter, but in the section that precedes precedes it, we have provided an overflow of the life philosophies of a few international champions of longevity. We are talking about supercentenarians, people who live to 110 years of age or more. The term coined in 1970 by Norris McWhirter, editor of the Guinness Book of World Records. Its use became more widespread in the 1990s after it appeared in William Strauss and Neil Howe's generations. Today there are an estimated 300 to 450 supercentenarians in the world, although the age of only around 75 of them has been confirmed. They are not superheroes, but we could see them as such for having spent far more time on this planet than average life expectancy would predict. Given the rise of life expectancy around the world, the number of supercentenarians might also increase. A healthy and purposeful life could help us join their ranks. Let's take a look at what a few of them have to say. Misao Okawa, 117. Eat and sleep, and you will live longer. You have to learn to relax. According to the Gerontology Research Group, until April 2015, the oldest living person in the world was Misao Okawa, who passed away in a care facility in Osaka, Japan, after living for 117 years and 27 days. The daughter of the textile merchant, she was born in 1898 when Spain lost its colonies in Cuba and the Philippines and the United States annexed Hawaii and launched Pepsi Cola until she was 110. This woman, who lived in three different centuries, cared for herself unassisted. When specialists asked about her self-care routine, Misao answered simply, "Eat soup, eating sushi, and sleeping." To which we should add, having a tremendous thirst for life. When they inquired about her secret for longevity, she answered with a smile, "I ask myself the same thing." Proof that Japan continues to be factory of long life. In July of the same year, Sakari Momoi passed away at 112 years and 105 years old, oldest man in the world, though he was the younger than 57 women. Maria Coppola. I have never eaten meat in my life. Okay. Born in Ecuador in 1889, Maria Coppola was recognized by Guinness as the world's oldest person. She died in pneumonia in 2006 at 116 years and 347 days old, leaving behind three children, 12 grandchildren, and 20 great grandchildren. She gave one of her last interview at age 107, sharing her memories and her thoughts. "I am happy and I give thanks to the God who keep me going. I never thought I would live so long, and I thought I would die long ago. My hundred Antonio Coppola was my husband. Antonio Coppola was the captain of the ship. He passed away at 84. We had two daughters and a son, and now I have many grandchildren and great grandchildren. Things were better back in the old days. People behaved better. We used to dance. We were more restrained. There was this one song I love dancing to, Maria by Louis Larson. I still remember most of the word. I also remember many prayers and say them every day. I like the waltz and can still dance it. I still I can also I also still make crafts. I still do of the things I did when I was in school. When she had finished recalling her past, she began to dance, one of her great passions, with an energy that made her seem decades younger. When asked about her secret for longevity, she responded simply, "I don't know what the secret of long life is. The only thing I do is I never eat in my life. I attribute it to the let. I attribute it to that." Jane Calment, 122. Everything's fine. Born in Alès, France in February 1975, Jane Allen until lived until lived until August 14, 1997, making her on until 100 stopped smoking at 120 when cataracts starting making it hard for her to bring a cigarette to her lips. One of her secrets may have been her sense of humor. As she said on her 120th birthday, "I see badly, I hear badly, I feel bad, but everything is fine." वाह, ये बढ़िया था. Walter Browning, 114. If you keep your mind and body busy, you will be around a long time. Born in Minnesota in 1896, Walter Browning was able to see the would had he would had two wives. He had in the Montana, where he remained many interviews in his final years as he could. Your mind and your body, you keep. Back then, he was exercising every day. Among Breuning's other secret, he had a habit of we are all made a deal with God. If he wasn't going to get better, it was time to go. Alexander Imik, 111. I just haven't died yet. Born in Poland in 1911, Alexander Imik was a chemist and parapsychologist residing in the United States who, after the death of his predecessor in 2000, became the Imik longevity. It's not as though I would won the Nobel Prize, he said upon being declared world. He answered, water break. I have been reading for two and a half an hours. Ikigais, artists, artist. The secret to a long life, however, is not held by super centenarians alone. There are many people of advanced age who, though they haven't made it into Guinness World Record, offer us inspiration, the idea for bringing energy and meaning to our lives. Artists, for example, who carry the torch to their ikigai instead of retiring, have this power. Art, in all its form, is an ikigai that can bring happiness and purpose to our days. Enjoying or enjoying or creating beauty is free, or something all humans beings have access to. Hakusai, the Japanese artist who made woodblock prints in the ukiyo-e style and lived for 88 years from the mid 88 from the mid 18th to the mid 19th century, added to his postscript to the first edition of his 100 views of Mount Fuji. All that I have produced before the age of 70 is not worth being counted. It is at the age of 73 that I have somewhat begun to understand the structure of the true nature of animals and grasses, and trees and birds, and fishes and insects. Consequently, Consequently, at 80 years of age, I should have made still more progress. At 90, I hope to have penetrated into mysteries of things. At 100 years of age, I should have reached decidedly a marvelous degrees where I shall be a 107 all that I do, everything, every point, every line shall be instinct with life. In the pages that follow, we have collected some of the most inspirational words from the artists interviewed by Camille Swilly for the New York Times. Of those still living, none of have retired. When you have a clear purpose, no one can stop you. The actor Christopher Plummer, still working at 86, reveals that would be a nice theatrical way to go. Tezuka, the father of modern Japanese manga, shared his feeling before he died in 1989. His last words as he drew one final cartoon were, please just let me work. The 86-year-old filmmaker Frederick Wiseman declared on a stroll through Paris that he likes to work, which likes that, but my friends are either dead or Herrera, a painter who just entered her 100th year, sold her first canvas at age 89 Today, her works is in the permanent collection of Tate Modern and Museum of Modern Art. When asked how she viewed her future, she responded, I am always waiting to finish the next thing. Absurd, I know. I go by day. Absurd. For his part, naturalist and author Edward Wilson asserted, I feel I have enough experience to join those who are addressing big questions. About 10 years ago, when I began reading and thinking more broadly about the questions of what are we, where did we come from, and where are we going, I was astonished at how little these was being done. Ellsworth Kelly, an artist who passed away in 2015 at the age of 92, assured us that the idea that we lose our faculties with the age is in part a myth because instead we develop a greater clarity and capacity for observation. It's one thing about getting older, you see more. Every day I am continuing to see new things. That's why there are new paintings. At 86, the architect Frank Clary reminds us that some buildings can take 7 years from the time you are hired until you are finished. A fact that favors a patient attitude with regard to the passage of time. The man responsible for the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, however, knows how to live in the here and now. You stay in your time. You don't go backward. If I think if you relate to time you are in, you keep your eyes and ears open. Read the paper. You see what's going on. Stay curious about everything. You will automatically be in your time. Okay. So chapter 4 is complete, and the stream is 2 hours and 40 minutes and still going. So goodbye.